Welcome back. You're watching Inside Politics. Thank you for staying with us. Just to reintroduce my panelists, in studio I'm joined by Charles Owino, former police spokesperson, Hesba Nwila, communication strategist, Ruth Ambogo, governance expert, and Dr. Alutalala Mokwana, who's an advocate of the High Court. Dr. Alutalala, before the break, I posed the question in terms of the legality around the reappointments of these cabinet secretaries. In terms of the legal dialect, dismissed CSs, are they ineligible to hold public office? Are they in the same category as impeached governors who are found unsuitable to serve? Your take.
Thank you very much, Rogers. I noticed that you have discreetly barred me from making a contribution to the initial topic, which the co-panelists did, and I gladly oblige because you are the host.
We have time.
A number of questions have been raised as to whether there is a direct similarity between the removal from office of the CSs and the governors.
Yes.
I just want to explain a little bit on the issue of the removal of the governors from office, so that we can then juxtapose the two and find some headway.
Okay.
Under the Constitution, the governor's removal is a direct process through the Senate. There is no other authority that can remove the governor from office. Now, once the governor has gone through the motions of impeachment, and if the Senate should find the governor culpable of the grounds upon which the impeachment proceedings have been proposed, the governor is then removed from office. That removal in itself, therefore, hinges upon violation of the Constitution. Now, then you go back to Chapter 6, specifically Article 72, 73, 74 onwards, which say that a state officer or a public officer who is found guilty of violating the Constitution is debarred from then again ascending to that office.
Okay.
So in the case of the governor, that is fairly straightforward. Now let's look at the CSs. Now the CSs is to be found under Article 152, thereabout. Now, there are three provisions relating to the removal of the CSs. The first one under that article says the president may reassign under Article 152A. He may reassign. That is one.
Okay.
Reassignment deals with the reshuffles that we are familiar with, so that the president then, at his own wisdom, may decide that Cabinet Secretary X is better serving under Portfolio Y and not Portfolio Z. So that's fairly straightforward.
All right.
But then there is B, which says that the president may dismiss. Now, I want this use of the word may to be clear here to our audience. The fact that the word is may means that there is no obligation or compulsion on the part of the head of state to dismiss in certain circumstances. In other words, there is no constitutional threshold being placed under B, where it says the president may dismiss.
Okay.
Now, we need to hold on there and see how that dovetails into the next one. C, that the president shall dismiss a CS if the National Assembly resolves. In other words, therefore, that the drafters of the Constitution had two scenarios where the president may dismiss the CSs. Under B, the president may dismiss, and they don't give the reasons. And C, shall dismiss. Now, shall in legal draftsmanship means it's a compulsion. The president has no choice. Now, I have seen colleagues, some of them pretty senior in this field, who have opined that by virtue of the dismissal, the president therefore arrived at a constitutional threshold, that he was persuaded that these ladies and gentlemen had violated the constitutional principles, and that's why he dismissed them. Now, that is an interpretation question. It is not expressly provided here. My humble submission on this one is that where the CSS had been submitted through the process of the National Assembly proceedings, that would give each and every member of the cabinet a chance under Article 50, the right to be heard. The right to be heard presupposes that every person, CS, MCA, everybody here, will individually have a chance to confront his accuser.
Okay.
The Constitution does not contemplate a mass burial like this one was. And therefore, in my humble submission, the president relied on sub-article B, where there is no compulsion on the threshold for him to meet so as to dismiss. It then becomes a moral question, because we have to decide as a nation, and I think the draft has decided, what are our moral threshold? And so those who are opining that the president was wrong in returning these 6 ladies and gentlemen are standing on the moral pedestal under Article 6, Chapter 6, which outlines what it is a state officer must do in terms of moral probity, financial probity, not to accept any gifts. His or her ethics and moral code must be higher. That is a moral pedestal. So the issue of whether the president should have gone by the moral pedestal high ground or whether he should then have stood on the constitutional threshold between sub-article B and C, that is an interpretation question. And in my view, Rogers, this is something that is ripe for our judges to pronounce themselves upon. Because now we seem to be having 2 different interpretations, and to be fair to those 6 ladies and gentlemen who have returned to cabinet, they risk being lynched by the mob. And the law ought to be interpreted by the courts. I thank you.
In 30 seconds or so, the question of an attorney general being dismissed by the president. Does the president have such powers?
Technically, no, because the attorney general is dismissed through a procedure similar to what I have just described, in terms of, which really runs almost parallel with the procedure of removal of the citizens, because the attorney general, therefore, has also to go through a process of impeachment, so to speak. But again, whether the president has relied on the fact that the attorney general is a member of the cabinet and therefore he takes that decision based on the subclause B, again, that is the issue of interpretation you're talking about. The long and short of it is that the judges have to pronounce themselves on this interpretation immediately to save the president any embarrassment, if it is to come, because the already guys were in court, or if for nothing else, to give justice to those 6 who have been given a chance, so that when they are being bundled out again on the basis of the Gen Z wave, they must go home knowing that it's the Constitution that has protected them or not protected them.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So let's shift focus right now, away from the cabinet reappointments and appointments. I'd like us to take a look at the question of a divided opposition, because it seems Azimio is pulling in different sides, especially when it comes to what ODM wants in terms of a government of national unity and what the other Azimio affiliate parties want as well. Let's listen in to some of the sentiments that have been shared in regards to that.
Me as James Agre Orengo, putting aside